Your employment with Porter Industries ends today, Kinsley, my sister Mira announced, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the glass conference table. Please have your belongings removed from the premises by 5 o'clock. I looked around the executive boardroom, taking in the shocked expressions of the department heads, the uncomfortable shifting of our legal counsel, and the barely concealed triumph dancing in Myra's eyes. She'd been planning this moment for months, probably years if I'm being honest. The crown of CEO had finally been placed on her head 3 days ago, and now she was wielding her new power like a sword. Understood, I replied, my voice calm and measured. I gathered my tablet and portfolio, offering a polite nod to the executives who had worked alongside me for the better part of a decade. I'll make sure everything is handled appropriately. As I walked toward the door, I caught the confusion on our CFO's face, the concern from our operations director, and the absolute satisfaction radiating from Mira. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd finally removed the competition, the sister who had always been one step ahead in everything that mattered to our family business. The heavy door clicked shut behind me and I allowed myself the smallest smile. My sister had no idea what she'd just done. My name is Kinsley Porter. I'm 38 years old and until approximately 10 minutes ago, I held the position of Executive Vice President of Client Relations at Porter Industries, the commercial real estate development firm my grandfather established in 1962. For 12 years, I'd been the backbone of this company's expansion, securing the partnerships that transformed us from a regional player in Austin, Texas, into a nationally recognized development powerhouse. While Mira spent her time networking at charity galas and positioning herself as the face of Porter Industries, I was in the trenches negotiating with property owners, architects, and investors. While she perfected her media presence and cultivated relationships with board members, I was building the actual business that funded her lifestyle and reputation. My assistant, Claire Donovan, jumped up from her desk as I approached my office. Kinsley, what just happened? There are rumors flying around that. It's true, I interrupted gently, ushering her into my office and closing the door. Mira terminated my position. I need to clear out today. Claire's face went pale. She can't do that. This company would collapse without you. You've brought in every major development deal we've had in the last 5 years. She can and she has. I moved to my desk and unlocked the bottom drawer, pulling out a navy blue leather folder I'd been maintaining for exactly this scenario. But here's what Mira doesn't know. She doesn't understand how this business actually operates. Claire watched as I opened the folder, revealing documents I'd carefully organized over the past 6 years. Partnership agreements, consulting contracts, and legal structures that would look innocent to anyone who didn't understand their true purpose. Remember when I created KP Development Consulting 6 years ago? I asked, spreading the documents across my desk. Her eyes widened with sudden understanding. The independent consulting firm. You said it was for tax optimization and flexibility in negotiations. It was for much more than that. I couldn't help the satisfaction in my voice. Every major project we've developed in the last 6 years, the contracts don't run through Porter Industries as the primary developer. They run through KP Development Consulting, with Porter Industries serving as the construction and management partner. Claire sat down heavily in one of my office chairs. You mean? I mean that I technically own the development rights to every active project in our portfolio. The Riverside Commons mixed-use development? Why? The Canyon Creek Office Park? Why? The downtown luxury residential towers? All mine. Porter Industries is contracted to handle construction and property management, but the development agreements, the investor relationships, the actual profit participation, those all belong to KP Development Consulting. The realization spread across Claire's face. How did the board approve this? They did approve it enthusiastically, actually. 6 years ago, when I proposed the structure to our father and the board, I positioned it as a way to provide more agile deal-making capabilities. Dad was concerned about liability exposure and thought having a separate consulting entity would protect the main company. The board saw it as smart business structuring. Mira was too focused on her VP of marketing role to even attend those meetings. I pulled out another document, this one showing the current active projects. We have 14 developments in various stages right now. Combined value of approximately $320 million. Porter Industries' role is important, but it's not irreplaceable. My relationships with the investors, the property owners, and the architectural firms? Those are irreplaceable. Claire leaned forward. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Nathan Caldwell from Elevation Capital Group, one of our largest investment partners. I put it on speaker. Kinsley, I just received a very strange email from someone named Mira Porter, claiming she's now my primary contact for the Canyon Creek expansion project. I kept my voice professional. Good afternoon, Nathan. Yes, there have been some organizational changes at Porter Industries. Mira is the new CEO. I don't care if she's the Queen of England, Nathan replied bluntly. My contracts are with KP Development Consulting, which means they're with you, Kinsley. Is there something I should be concerned about? Not at all. I'm simply transitioning out of my role at Porter Industries. KP Development Consulting remains fully operational and committed to all existing projects. There was a pause. So you're leaving Porter Industries but continuing with our projects? That's correct. All development agreements remain in full effect. Good. Because if you had said otherwise, I'd be calling my attorneys right now to discuss breach of contract. Mira Porter has never been involved in any of our dealings, and I have no intention of starting now. After ending the call, I looked at Claire. That's going to be the first of many similar conversations today. My phone immediately rang again. This time it was Diane Shepard from Westfield Property Group. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, I'd received calls from 9 different investors and partners, all expressing confusion or concern about Mira's outreach attempts. Not one of them had any interest in working with her directly. They'd all signed contracts with me through KP Development Consulting, and they expected me to continue managing their projects. Claire had started packing my personal items, but we both knew this wasn't really goodbye. What's your next move? She asked. First, I'm going to finish this conversation with Henry Wallace. I glanced at my computer screen where I had an ongoing email exchange with one of our architectural partners. Then I'm going to go home, pour myself a very large glass of wine, and start planning the future of KP Development Consulting as a fully independent firm. You mean you're not going back to work with Porter Industries at all? I shook my head. Why would I? Mira has made it clear she doesn't want me here. She's given me the perfect opportunity to break free from family politics and build something that's truly mine. The only question is whether I want to continue using Porter Industries as my construction partner or find new partners who might be more reliable. Claire bit her lip. Kinsley, can I be completely honest with you? Always. I gave my resignation to HR an hour ago. I told them my last day would be Friday, but I'm hoping you'll consider bringing me on board with KP Development Consulting. I've been your assistant for 8 years, and I'd rather continue working with you than stay here under Mira's management. The gesture touched me more than I expected. Claire, I would be absolutely grateful to have you. But I need to be honest, I'm building this from scratch. It won't have the stability of Porter Industries, at least not immediately. I'll take my chances with you, she said firmly. You're the one who actually knows how to run this business. At exactly 4:30, my office phone rang with an internal extension I recognized immediately. Mira's new CO office. We need to talk, she said without preamble when I answered. Now. I'll be there in 5 minutes. When I entered Mira's office, the corner suite that had belonged to our father until his retirement last month, I found her standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her posture rigid with tension. What have you done? She demanded, spinning to face me. I've packed my belongings as requested. I'll be out by 5 o'clock. Don't play games with me, Kinsley. I've spent the last 3 hours fielding calls from investors and partners, all of whom are telling me they won't work with Porter Industries without you. What kind of poison have you been spreading? I remained calm, taking a seat in one of her guest chairs without being invited. I haven't spread anything. I've simply been answering questions about the transition honestly. The investors have contracts with KP Development Consulting, my firm. They're understandably concerned about continuity. Mira's face flushed. Your firm? You work for Porter Industries. I worked for Porter Industries. Past tense. As of this morning, you terminated that employment. However, I own KP Development Consulting, which holds the development rights to all our major projects. That company is independent and will continue operating regardless of my employment status here. This is sabotage. She moved behind her desk as if the physical barrier would give her more authority. You deliberately set this up to undermine the company. I set this up with full board approval 6 years ago as a legitimate business structure. Every document was reviewed by our corporate attorneys. Every contract was signed with proper authorization. This isn't sabotage, Mira. This is simply the reality of how our business has been operating for years. You would know that if you'd ever bothered to understand the actual mechanics of what we do instead of just enjoying the benefits. Dad will never forgive you for this. There was her favorite weapon. Our father's approval had always been the ultimate prize in our household, the thing we'd both competed for since childhood. Mira had usually won that battle through charm and social grace. I'd won in business competence, but Dad had never quite valued that as much. Dad approved the structure, I reminded her. If he has concerns now, he can address them with me directly. But I suspect he'll be more interested in understanding why you fired the person responsible for generating most of this company's revenue without first understanding what that would mean for ongoing operations. Mira pressed her palms flat against her desk. The board is calling an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. Your presence is mandatory. I don't work for Porter Industries anymore. Remember. Don't be difficult. They want to discuss the situation with the development contracts. I stood, smoothing my skirt. My attorney will attend on my behalf. I have 14 active projects that need my attention, and I can't spend my time in meetings for a company that just terminated my employment. As I walked toward the door, Myra's voice stopped me. Why did you do this, Kinsley? Why did you create that consulting company in the first place if not to eventually use it against us? I turned back to face her. The question deserved an honest answer. 6 years ago, I watched you take credit for the Lakewood development deal in a board presentation. You presented my analysis, my negotiation strategy, my investor relationships as if they were your own work. Dad congratulated you afterward and told me I should learn from your presentation skills. I paused, letting the memory settle between us. That's when I realized that no matter how much value I created for Porter Industries, it would always be the family company, not my company. I would always be working to enhance your reputation, support Dad's legacy, and build something that would never truly be mine. The consulting firm wasn't a weapon, Mira. It was a life raft. I just never expected to need it quite this soon. The emergency board meeting the next morning was everything I expected it to be. My attorney, Vanessa Kimball, attended while I spent the morning on a conference call with 3 different investment groups, assuring them of continued project management excellence. Vanessa called me at noon with a full report. They're panicking, she said bluntly. Mira tried to argue that your consulting firm's structure was a breach of fiduciary duty and that the board should pursue legal action to force transfer of the contracts back to Porter Industries. My stomach tightened despite my confidence in our legal position. And 3 board members who were present when the structure was originally approved shut her down immediately. They have the meeting minutes from 6 years ago showing that your father enthusiastically endorsed the arrangement. They remember that it was positioned as a strategic advantage for the company. So no lawsuit? No lawsuit. Instead, they've authorized Mira to negotiate a formal partnership agreement with KP Development Consulting. They want to lock you in as their exclusive development partner for at least 5 years. I leaned back in my temporary office chair. I was currently working from my home office while searching for proper commercial space. They fire me on Monday, then want to hire my company on Wednesday. That's rich. The offer is actually quite substantial. They're proposing a guaranteed annual minimum of $2.5 million plus performance bonuses tied to project profitability. Essentially, they want to formalize the arrangement you already had but with better compensation and clear terms. What's Myra's position on this? According to my contacts in the room, she fought it until the very end. The board gave her a choice. Accept the partnership with your firm or resign as CEO. The company can't survive without the active development projects, and those projects can't continue without you. After ending the call, I sat in silence, processing the implications. I'd expected leverage, but this was beyond what I'd anticipated. Porter Industries wasn't just acknowledging my value, they were completely dependent on me. My phone buzzed with a text from our father. We need to talk. Dinner tonight. I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. I'll meet you at Giovanni's at 7. The conversation with our father would be inevitable, but I needed time to decide exactly what I wanted to say. The rest of the day was a whirlwind of activity. By 3 o'clock, I'd secured a lease on a small but professional office suite in downtown Austin. By 4, I'd hired Claire officially as my director of operations. By 5, I had preliminary commitments from 2 additional staff members who wanted to leave Porter Industries to join my firm. The business was building itself faster than I'd anticipated. At Giovanni's that evening, I found my father already seated at a corner table, looking older and more tired than I remembered. The stress of retirement combined with the chaos at Porter Industries had clearly taken its toll. "You look well, Kinsley," he said as I sat down. "Independence seems to suit you." "Thank you, Dad." He ordered wine for both of us before getting to the point. "Your sister is in over her head." It wasn't what I expected him to say. "She's had 3 days in the role. That's hardly a fair assessment period. She fired you without understanding the business structure you'd built. She alienated every major investor we have in a single morning. She tried to convince the board to sue you, which would have been an unmitigated disaster." He shook his head. "I made a mistake, Kinsley. I should have named you CEO when I retired." The admission hung in the air between us. This was what I'd wanted to hear for years. The recognition that I was the more capable leader. The acknowledgement that I'd been overlooked despite my competence. But now that it was here, it felt hollow. "Why didn't you?" I asked quietly. "Tradition mostly. Mira is the older daughter. I convinced myself that her strengths in public relations and relationship management would be more valuable for a CEO than your operational expertise. I thought you could continue handling the actual business while she managed the external perception." He met my eyes. I was wrong. A CEO needs to understand how the business actually operates, and Mira never bothered to learn that. "She learned what you taught her was important," I pointed out. "You always praised her social skills and her ability to network. You always told me I needed to be more like her in that regard." "Another mistake on my part." He sighed. "I'm asking you to come back, Kinsley. Not to your old position but as CEO. The board is preparing to make changes and they want you leading the company." I took a sip of wine, using the time to gather my thoughts. A month ago, even a week ago, this offer would have been everything I wanted. The validation, the authority, the recognition of my capabilities. It was all being handed to me. But something had shifted in the 3 days since Mira fired me. I'd glimpsed a different future. One where I wasn't constantly navigating family politics or fighting for respect in a company that would always see me as someone's daughter rather than a leader in my own right. "What about Mira?" I asked. "She would transition to Chief Marketing Officer. It's actually a better fit for her skills. She could focus on the company's public image and brand development without the operational responsibilities she's clearly not prepared for." "And she's agreed to this?" "Not yet. That's where I need your help. The board is making the CEO transition conditional on you and Mira finding a way to work together professionally. They don't want the family drama to continue affecting the business." I set down my wine glass. "Dad, I appreciate the offer. I really do. And I'm grateful that you're finally recognizing my capabilities. But I'm not sure coming back to Porter Industries is the right decision for me." He looked genuinely shocked. "What do you mean?" "I mean that in 3 days of operating independently, I've been more energized and fulfilled than I've been in years at Porter Industries. I'm not constantly wondering if I'll get credit for my work or if Mira will present it as her own. I'm not navigating family politics or trying to prove my worth to people who should already recognize it. I'm just doing the work I love without all the baggage that comes with being part of the family company." "But Porter Industries is your legacy. It's your grandfather's legacy." "No, Dad. It's your legacy and Myra's legacy. It was never really mine, no matter how much I contributed to it. And maybe that's okay. Maybe I'm supposed to build my own legacy instead of trying to fit into someone else's." The waiter arrived with our meals, giving us both a moment to regroup. When he left, my father tried a different approach. "What would it take to bring you back? Name your terms." "It's not about terms. It's about whether that's the future I want. Right now, I genuinely don't know." We finished dinner with easier conversation about family matters and his retirement plans. But the main question remained unresolved, and I could see it weighing on him. When we parted ways in the parking lot, he pulled me into an unexpected hug. "I'm proud of you, Kinsley. I should have said that more often over the years. Whatever you decide about Porter Industries, I want you to know that I recognize now what you've built and what you're capable of." As I drove home, I felt the sting of tears. The validation I'd craved for so long had finally arrived, but it came too late to change the trajectory I'd already chosen. Over the following weeks, KP Development Consulting transformed from a paper entity into a thriving independent firm. I secured a long-term lease on a full office suite, hired a team of 6 professionals, and established partnerships with 2 construction management firms that could handle the execution side of our developments. The decision about Porter Industries remained complicated. The board's offer still stood: take over as CEO and repair the relationship with Mira. My father called weekly to check in and gently advocate for my return. Even some of the investors I worked with suggested that consolidating under Porter Industries might provide more stability for the projects. But every day I spent building KP Development Consulting reinforced my sense that I was on the right path. The company culture we were creating was collaborative and merit-based. There were no family politics, no historical baggage, just a team of talented people working toward shared goals. 6 weeks after Mira fired me, she requested a meeting. Just the 2 of us at a neutral location. We met at a small cafe halfway between our respective offices. Mira looked exhausted, her usual polished appearance showing cracks. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her suit was slightly rumpled. "You look tired," I said as we both sat down with our coffees. "I haven't slept properly in weeks," she admitted. "Running Porter Industries is nothing like I thought it would be. It's a demanding job. It's an impossible job when half the investors won't return my calls and the other half are actively hostile because they blame me for driving you away." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "The board is pressuring me to step down. Dad is pressuring me to convince you to come back. And I'm sitting here wondering how everything fell apart so quickly." I waited, letting her continue. "I fired you because I was jealous," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "You were always the smart one, the capable one, the one who actually understood how to run the business. I thought if I removed you, everyone would finally see me as the leader instead of just the pretty face who gave presentations. But all I did was prove that I don't actually know what I'm doing without you there to handle the real work." The honesty surprised me. Mira had never been particularly self-aware about our dynamic. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I'm asking you to come back. Not as my employee but as CEO. The board wants it, Dad wants it, and honestly I want it too. I'm not cut out for this role, and pretending otherwise is destroying both me and the company." "And what would you do?" "The board has suggested I move into the Chief Marketing Officer position. It's actually what I'm good at: building the brand, managing public relations, creating the external image. I just can't handle the operational complexity of running the whole company." I studied my sister across the table. For the first time in our lives, she was being completely honest about our respective strengths and limitations. It was the vulnerability I'd been waiting for, the acknowledgement that we had different capabilities. But it still didn't change my fundamental reality. "Mira, I appreciate your honesty. I really do. And I'm glad you're recognizing where your skills are best utilized. But I've spent the last 6 weeks building something that's mine. Not the family's, not Dad's legacy, but genuinely mine. And I'm not sure I want to give that up to return to Porter Industries, even as CEO." "So you'd rather see the company struggle?" "I'd rather see you and the board find a solution that doesn't require me to sacrifice what I'm building." Porter Industries was successful before I created KP Development Consulting. It can be successful again with the right leadership and structure. Myra's expression hardened slightly. "You mean it can be successful if I step aside and let someone else take over?" "If that's what needs to happen, yes. But that someone doesn't have to be me." We finished our coffee in tense silence. The honesty had only gone so far before we hit the wall of our fundamental conflict. Mira wanted to maintain her position and have me solve her problems, while I wanted to pursue my own path without being pulled back into family dynamics. As we parted ways, Mira made one final appeal. "The board is meeting next week to make final decisions. They're going to offer you the CEO position formally. I'm asking you as your sister to consider it seriously. Not for me, not even for Dad, but for grandfather's legacy." That night, I reviewed the financial projections for KP Development Consulting. In just 6 weeks, we demonstrated solid growth potential. With 14 active development projects and interest from 3 new investor groups, we were positioned for expansion. Adding Porter Industries as an official client would provide stability, but it wouldn't be necessary for survival. I also reviewed the formal offer from Porter Industries board. The compensation package was extraordinary, far more than I'd ever made as an executive there. The CEO role would come with complete operational authority, board support, and the resources of an established company. On paper, it was the obvious choice. Take the CEO position, repair the relationship with Mira, lead the family company into its next chapter of growth. It was what any reasonable businessperson would choose. But I'd spent too many years being reasonable, accommodating, and putting the family company's needs above my own aspirations. This moment represented something different. The chance to build something entirely my own without the weight of family expectations or the complications of shared legacy. I made my decision. The board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday morning. On Monday evening, I sent a formal letter to the board chair declining their CEO offer but proposing an alternative arrangement. KP Development Consulting would enter into a 5-year strategic partnership with Porter Industries. My firm would continue managing all existing development projects and would give Porter Industries first right of refusal on new opportunities. In exchange, Porter Industries would provide construction management services at preferred rates and would have representation on KP Development Consulting's advisory board. It was a partnership of equals, not a subordinate relationship. It preserved the business connections while maintaining my independence. The board accepted my counterproposal within 24 hours. They also announced that they'd hired an external CEO candidate with extensive real estate development experience to take over leadership of Porter Industries. Mira would transition to Chief Marketing Officer, a role where she could leverage her actual strengths. 3 months after my sister fired me, I stood in the completed office space of KP Development Consulting. We now had a team of 12 partnership agreements with 3 construction firms, and a development pipeline worth over $400 million. Claire walked in with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. Celebrating the Riverside Commons groundbreaking tomorrow? Celebrating all of it, I replied, accepting a glass. The fact that we're here, that we're thriving, that we built this from nothing in just 3 months. You built this, Claire corrected. The rest of us just followed your lead. My phone buzzed with a message from Mira. Saw the announcement about the Riverside Commons project. Congratulations on the groundbreaking. The marketing team at Porter Industries would love to partner on promoting it if you're interested. I smiled at the message. It was professional, cordial, and represented a healthier relationship than Mira and I had maintained in years. We were no longer competing for the same space or fighting over the same resources. We each had our own domains where we could excel. I responded, let's schedule a call next week to discuss. Would be good to coordinate our approaches. As I looked out the window of my office, my actual office in my own company built with my own vision, I thought about that morning 3 months ago when Mira had fired me. She'd thought she was removing an obstacle. Instead, she'd freed me to become exactly who I was meant to be. The irony was perfect. The moment that was supposed to be my defeat had become my greatest victory. And the laughter I'd felt when she terminated my employment? That was the sound of chains breaking, of possibilities opening, of a future unfolding that was finally, completely mine. Building KP Development Consulting into a significant player in the commercial real estate development industry became my singular focus. 6 months after leaving Porter Industries, we'd grown to 18 employees and had expanded our geographic reach beyond Austin into Houston and Dallas markets. The partnership with Porter Industries had evolved into something unexpectedly functional. Their new CEO, Raymond Fletcher, was a seasoned professional with no family baggage or ego to manage. He understood our respective roles clearly. KP Development Consulting handled the development side, including land acquisition, investor relations, and project conception, while Porter Industries managed construction execution and property management. Mira and I found a working rhythm as well. She focused on marketing and public relations for Porter Industries projects, including those we were partnering on. I focused on the development and investor side. Our interactions were professional and surprisingly cordial. The competition that had defined our relationship for decades had disappeared once we were no longer fighting for the same territory. Your sister called earlier, Claire mentioned one afternoon as she brought in a stack of contracts for review. She wanted to know if you'd be interested in joining a panel discussion at the Real Estate Development Conference next month. She's organizing it for Porter Industries but thought having both of you speak would be interesting. What's the topic? Women in commercial real estate development. She specifically mentioned that your story of starting an independent firm would be compelling content. I considered the invitation. A few months ago, I would have been suspicious of Myra's motives. Now, I recognized it for what it was, a genuine professional opportunity that would benefit both of us. Tell her I'm interested. Have her send over the details. The conference panel turned out to be one of the more rewarding experiences of my career. Mira and I sat alongside 3 other women leaders in commercial real estate, discussing the challenges and opportunities we'd encountered. When the moderator asked about my transition from Porter Industries to KP Development Consulting, I was honest about the circumstances. My sister fired me, I said with a slight smile, and the audience laughed. It wasn't pleasant at the time, but it turned out to be exactly what I needed. Sometimes the worst moments create the space for the best outcomes. Mira added her own perspective. I made that decision for the wrong reasons, and I've learned a lot from the consequences. What I've realized is that we're both more successful now that we're not trying to occupy the same space. Kinsley is an exceptional developer and entrepreneur. I'm better at brand building and relationship management. Trying to force us both into the same organizational hierarchy was always going to create conflict. After the panel, several audience members approached us with questions and networking requests. One young woman, probably in her mid-20s, asked a question that stuck with me. How did you move past the anger? If my sister fired me, I don't think I could ever work with her again professionally. I glanced at Mira before responding. The anger was real and it took time to process. But I eventually realized that holding on to it was only hurting me. Mira made a bad decision in how she handled the situation, but it ultimately freed me to build something I'm more passionate about than I ever was at Porter Industries. The best revenge isn't holding a grudge. It's succeeding so spectacularly that the original slight becomes irrelevant. 1 year after being fired, I received an unexpected invitation. The Austin Business Journal wanted to feature KP Development Consulting in their annual Companies to Watch issue. The recognition was gratifying, but what surprised me was the accompanying request. They wanted to interview both me and Mira about how we'd navigated the transition from family business conflict to independent success. The interview took place at a neutral location with both of us sitting across from the journalist, Emily Hartford. Let's address the obvious question first, Emily began. Mira, you fired your sister from the family company. Kinsley, you essentially took most of the business with you when you left. How did you move from that level of conflict to where you are now? Mira spoke first. I made a significant error in judgment. I let personal insecurity drive a professional decision, and it nearly destroyed both the family company and my relationship with my sister. The path to where we are now involved a lot of difficult conversations, some therapy, and a willingness to be honest about our respective strengths and weaknesses. And Kinsley, your perspective? Being fired was initially devastating, but it forced me to ask hard questions about what I really wanted from my career. I realized I'd been trying to fit into a role that was never quite right for me. Building KP Development Consulting allowed me to create something that aligned with my values and vision. As for Mira, we're family. That doesn't mean we have to work in the same company or even like each other all the time. But we can choose to be professional and supportive of each other's success. The article, when published, generated significant attention. Several business schools requested permission to use our story as a case study in family business dynamics and entrepreneurship. We both agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to help others navigate similar challenges. 18 months after leaving Porter Industries, KP Development Consulting had grown beyond my initial projections. We now had offices in 3 Texas cities, employed 32 people, and had a development pipeline exceeding $600 million. The partnership with Porter Industries remained strong but was no longer our primary source of business. We'd diversified significantly, working with multiple construction partners and expanding into new markets. I'd also started mentoring young women in commercial real estate development, something I'd never had time for during my years at Porter Industries. Every month, I hosted a roundtable discussion at our offices where aspiring developers could ask questions, share challenges, and learn from experienced professionals. At one of these sessions, a participant asked the question I'd been asked countless times. Do you regret how things ended with your family's company? I thought about it carefully before responding. I regret the pain that came with it. I regret that it took a crisis to force necessary changes. But I don't regret where I ended up. Sometimes the path to where you're supposed to be involves detours that seem catastrophic at the time but turn out to be exactly what you needed. 2 years after Mira fired me, I received a call from my father. He'd been mostly silent during my transition, offering occasional support but generally staying out of the business dynamics between his daughters. "I wanted you to know that the board is recognizing you at the annual Porter Industries Gala next month," he said. "They're giving you the Founders Award for contributions to the company's success." I was genuinely surprised. That's unexpected. It's overdue. The board recognizes that much of Porter Industries' current success is built on the foundation you created. Raymond has done an excellent job as CEO, but he's working with the client relationships, the project structures, and the business processes you developed. They want to acknowledge that. Will Mira be comfortable with this? She's the one who nominated you. She told the board that failing to recognize your contributions would be a continued injustice. The gala was a strange full-circle moment. I walked into the ballroom where I'd attended countless Porter Industries events over the years, but this time as the CEO of my own firm rather than as an executive trying to prove her worth. Mira found me before the program started. She looked happy, more relaxed than I'd seen her in years. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know these events aren't your favorite. Thank you for the nomination. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. You built the foundation for what Porter Industries has become. Pretending otherwise would be dishonest." She paused. "I've learned a lot in the past too.